What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us for the Monday edition of the Trading Rebellion Show. We got Nick Mancini, Chief Community Officer, Director of Research over at Trade the Chain, as well as Senior Market Analyst Monte and CJ, who last week it was Gemini. Now he has BitGo on his shirt. I got to tell you, I think this guy has picked up every piece of swag at every conference he's ever been to, and he's the only person who's worn it all. So I like it.
Alex,
By
you
half
actually
the
don't
other
know how
shirts I got.
you don't know how true that statement is. At Miami, at Bitcoin Miami, this man spent no time networking. He spent every second collecting swag and he got every single t-shirt. He made a point of it, actually. I think he may have had to buy some extra luggage or check an extra
They're
bag on
just
the way
shirts, and they're more valuable now because a third of the companies who I got no longer exist. So it's great, right? But thanks
No,
for that self-deprecating intro. Let's get to the prices. How about that?
Every day he heads to the gym with a new bag. Folks, this episode is going to be good. I mean, we're going to go over the usual BTC, DXY. We're going to go over ETH. CJ's going to come out of left field with some coffee and silver. And we're also going to talk about Worldcoin, which is, I know Nick had put on some positions in Worldcoin. It's still a disturbing crypto in my eyes, so we're gonna discuss it a little and what's going on there with Sam Altman and his vision of universal crypto reign. And also, we got a wild week as we head into the FOMC. You know, we're looking to see about volatility, where that's going to go. We're going to talk about reactions from the markets, what we expect the crypto markets to do, what we expect the TradFi markets to do. Also, right now sentiment is pulling in favor of a 25 basis point hike by the Fed, and all this surrounding earnings. So we still got earnings. We're still in earnings season. Still got some more to go. But with that being said, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today. And Nick, let's hit it off with a little macro.
Yes, sir. So let me pull up. We'll start with the data points that Alex mentioned just to make sure everybody's aware of time and date, and this is the wrong week. So Wednesday, obviously the FOMC decision at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and the press conference at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As Alex mentioned, we are expecting a 25 basis point hike. That seems like pretty much a done deal at this point. So more or less, we're expecting that to be priced in. But what is not priced in, what can never be priced in, is what Jerome Powell will say following the interest rate hike and his guidance, that what he says in the press conference, the answers to his Q&A will give us indication for market momentum moving forward. But right now, speaking to what you mentioned, Alex, the sentiment on the street is everyone is expecting a hawkish Powell. They do not think that he will agree or at least give good vibes towards the decreasing of inflation that we've seen. And people feel that he's going to keep the hawkishness high. So that's something to expect on Wednesday. And then, potentially what could be a saving grace is PCE on Friday, of which core we know is the more important number. And core is expected to drop to 4.2% from 4.6% the month prior. And PCE, although it's not here, I believe it is set to be 3.2%. So both drops drops expected for both numbers. And so if you're just kind of thinking about it, if we have a bad FOMC interest rate hike and press conference, then we have a couple of days of bearish price action. If PCE is the drop that we expect, meaning it's at or lower than expected, this could bring a little bit of rebound back to the markets towards weekend. So very important to consider what is happening on both Wednesday and Friday, because if you position yourself correctly, you could make a really good trade. To give more context to what we're seeing, we talked about this hand over foot, for weeks and weeks. We said, if it holds 99 and ends up moving back to 101, we would expect bearishness from risk markets. Obviously, crypto has bared the brunt of most of the bearishness, but equities, are near these recent highs as well and have not broken out. So the higher DXY goes, the more bearishness we would expect from risk markets. If it ends up dropping back below 101, this would be a great signal for the bulls. But the higher it climbs, the longer it stays above 101. We are keeping a bearish outlook until we hear from Jerome Powell and see the data this week. So that is what we're looking at on the macro.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for that. One of the things I do want to point out, and I have to bring this into play because I think, Nick, you and I on the B3 show yesterday hit this out pretty smart in our commentary on with the market. You came out with bearish sentiment going into FOMC, and I called out OGN in particular with its oversold position, and this trade could not have been better. I mean, and coming onto the show, I mean, it's hit newer lows from this going up pattern right here. We had a divergence right here of sentiment diving as it pumped, and once it got here around 12 cents, it was just ridiculous looking, especially with the sentiment so deep in the red. But I know that we made a few killer trades. Here's an example of some entry and exit points on it. Oops, it's not sharing that. Hold on. 1 second, folks. There, I'll go back to this. But here's an example of some of the action going on, and I got to tell you, it was perfect. Now we have OGN down 23.7%. We have a 1,400% spike in trading volume versus average. Tweet volume 1,000% versus average. What are we looking at here, Nick? And what could be some of the catalysts for why Origin just decided to plummet like this after taking such a meteoric rise?
Yeah, and before I get started, I do have to do a little humble brag. This is currently what I'm sitting on, and I'm not closing it anytime soon unless BTC makes a really nice stab back at the 29.5K lows. But you actually brought OGN to my attention yesterday. I was a bit lazy over the weekend and was not tracking the GTC charts like I should have. So, another reason to listen to Get Rev Radio, because Alex is reminding me of things that I should probably be keeping closer track of myself. But there's an interesting thing over the past week where we saw StormX also rise. And if you go and look, and here's a great process if you're ever seeing a random coin start to really rip. Go look at where the most volume is for that specific coin. On Binance, both StormX and Origin Protocol had over $2 billion volume trading hands in a 24-hour period. That is extremely unusual for two coins that have launched long ago and have received very little attention since. And I watched the StormX chart zoom up and then zoom back down. And of course, I was feeling a bit bearish across most other assets as well. So I said OGN already made a low. It made a higher low, and I'll actually pull up the chart right now to give a little bit of example to this, because this is one of my favorite trades, and CJ, it speaks to your kind of Livermore pattern. Let's pull this chart up. So CJ, you love the Livermore pattern. We made the high here, then we made a lower high. The lower high is typically a really good entry. That's where I entered up here, and we just watched it fall right back down. Now this was a bit of a more risky trade, as typically you would want to target one of these lows down here. But I'm feeling a little bit risky because I've had such strong bear conviction. And so I wrote it all the way down last night. I actually added a little bit on these spikes up here, and we're riding it all the way back down. Ideally, I'd like to, exit probably around this range down here. It's getting a bit low, so I probably should close now that I did my humble brag about it. But again, StormX pumped, dumped. OGN was doing the same thing. And when you see that lower high after a very large move, typically a really good entry, at least down to that local low right here. And of course, if that local low breaks, then you're targeting the next lows. And since all of this is broken, that's why I'm kind of looking down here. But, we always do have to remember, Alex, the fact that I showed my trade card, that I shared it, means that I should start to think about taking some money off the table. That goes for everybody, not just the people on this show. So
whenever you tell anybody about your open position, that's usually a signal to start looking.
Usually, yep, exactly.
All right, Monte, what do you got for us? How does this go into your Ethereum breakdown?
Well, yeah. First, I want to start with some Bitcoin dominance talk, because we haven't really touched on this in quite a bit, but this is particularly interesting because people think of Bitcoin dominance as kind of a one-dimensional metric for measuring risk in the crypto markets, but there is some nuance to it, and I think we're seeing that play out here with Bitcoin down 3.4% and ETH only down 2.3%. Typically, we'd expect higher beta from ETH. That being said, Bitcoin dominance is still falling. And when you see Bitcoin dominance falling, what you would ordinarily assume is that that is accompanied by risk on price action in the altcoins and that alts are outperforming Bitcoin. But in this scenario, what we're actually seeing is Bitcoin underperforming the alts because Bitcoin is a mega cap asset. It has such a large market cap. A 3.4% move in Bitcoin is significantly more capital, than all of these put together. So we're seeing Bitcoin dominance fall, and really there's no support. I mean, I guess you could mark this level here as support, like approximately 49.7, but it looks like with this bearish engulfing candle here that we're headed back down to approximately 48.5% for Bitcoin dominance. So until then, I'm not going to be longing any crypto assets. In fact, I think you can essentially short pretty much anything. But the one thing I wouldn't be shorting beyond Bitcoin, because I never short Bitcoin, is ETH. And that has to do with what I talked about earlier, how it's kind of showing this lower beta price action. Now, we can pontificate all day about why this is, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're seeing ETH outperform Bitcoin, and that's atypical. But what I think is going on here is that, there is a significant portion of ETH supply staked. And I think that results in when we have days of sell pressure, a little bit less sell pressure than in some of the other coins that have more open float. And Bitcoin, we had talked about how there was lots of Bitcoin flowing to exchanges last week. I think we're seeing some of that translate into sell pressure this week. So essentially, this is the one asset that I think has a chance of maintaining this $1,800 level, marked by this white line here. I think this is the most critical level to watch out for. But my outlook is essentially until we get this level for Bitcoin dominance, about 48.5, you can basically remain short pretty much anything. I know Nick already shared his trade card, so that may be cue to exit the shorts, but I do still think that, like, just looking at this from a technical perspective, and then you have, still a bunch of coins like XLM and XRP that had been, that are still significantly overextended. And, you want to talk about Livermore accumulation and, like, I guess you could call this a second swing high. I think there's plenty of opportunity to short that, short various assets. And that's evident from Bitcoin dominance and also the sentiment that we're seeing across the board on the Trade the Chain dashboard. So I agree with you, Nick. Look for those assets that are up big, seeing weird amounts of trading volume. If you see atypical trading volume, that's usually not sustainable. It's almost always not sustainable, and thus gives you the opportunity to fade it. So watch closely for flips in sentiment and large increases in volume. I think those are the two biggest indicators of what assets will be the best performing to the downside if you're looking to short this market.
As an additional, just to tack on to Monte, because we're talking about lower highs, and I actually kind of noticed Doge had outperforming sentiment today. It was one of the few that was actually up. I think it may have been the only coin. And kind of taking the same example that Alex did in terms of the low sentiment of OGN, the fact that I think Doge is starting to make a lower high and sentiment already skyrocketed. I'm now looking at Doge for possible shorts, because very similar to anything that's running, when I have a bearish conviction, I'm going to look for setups that will trade in the bearish direction. And since Doge already pumped and everything else looks quite weak, I think Doge has a good opportunity to probably come back a little bit.
Yeah, and XLM looked like an excellent opportunity. There's probably even still a little bit of run on there. But those, Monte, to your point, all those coins that were just overextended were just lining up. They had the same chart patterns, the same volume patterns, and it was almost non-quizzical to just short them. To take the easy trade. CJ. I've already had many cups today, but you got coffee on the mind. So what are we doing with coffee?
Yeah, it's a recent one, but
we all raising our glasses.
What did I start?
What is that? Diet Coke, Monte? There you go.
That's Monte's water. 3/4 of his body is Diet Coke. All right, yeah, I will get to coffee. I want to start by talking about the dollar rates and kind of going into FOMC Wednesday. Even though the dollar is going through a nice short squeeze, and there's also more large speculator longs in the British pound than there's been since 2007. So you could see this dollar squeeze certainly continue. So to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that equities have to go lower in the face of a rising dollar. In fact, equities have been going up all year in the face of rising rates. So I think that relationship can still kind of maintain. We did talk about trading around the dollar a little bit last week because it did move and still continues to squeeze. And I think that price action has not really ramifications for equities as much because you still see things like the Russell and NASDAQ going up today. But I think it definitely does for, maybe things like crypto, definitely for metals, and then also the other currencies. But the one trade that's kind of a long dollar proxy would be short silver this week. The reason why I decided to go with that today was because you see what we saw last week was a massive amount of dip buying in silver. And when you have all these longs that are basically up buying the top or trying to buy the dip, and price is unable to continue to make a new high. Here you can see the green. That's massive spike in speculator longs. But if you fail to make a new high or have any new momentum, if the dollar keeps trending, there's a lot of longs who are basically trapped and are going to be forced to puke if we keep going lower, possibly below 24. So I think you could see a nice long liquidation event in possibly both the pound, euro, and silver if the dollar, keeps rising, which I think it definitely could. So that's kind of my one trade in terms of like metals. The other one, as Alex had mentioned, coffee. This is one that's been crowded with a lot of shorts for a very long time. You have a lot of CTA funds who are, shorting and just doing trend following. Last Friday, we had one of the strongest closes, up 2.4%. That was the best performing day since, basically June 8th. So, nice surprise. We're getting a little bit of that short squeeze continuing. So I entered that earlier in the day. Also did short silver as well. But, this one closed a little bit more weak, sold off to end the day. So we'll see if, we can break higher and this short squeeze does continue because the softs have been doing pretty well in general. OJ made a new all-time high today. So it'll be interesting, but that's basically all that I'm looking at this week. Maybe there'll be some more that we can share in the community, but in terms of like crowded trades and long setups and short setups, that's what I'm looking into this week.
I have a feeling we'll have some really good setups around and after FOMC and as well as PCE.
Let's talk about FOMC for a second, Nick, and the rest of you guys. I mean, listen, what are your feelings between now and Wednesday? And we're assuming we're getting 25 basis point hike here. What are your feelings on that in the event that we do come Wednesday afternoon in the market?
I think so. I mean, of course, it's going to come down to Jerome Powell's presser and the language he uses. And on one hand, inflation has definitely dropped like a rock from the highs. It's certainly less sticky, but Alex, I sent this to you yesterday. It does look like energy may want to try and break out. And if energy does try and break out, that would definitely add a stickiness to inflation. So that's very much something to watch. The interesting indication that we're getting from the street right now is that everybody seems to think that the Fed is going to be quite hawkish in his tone, and Jerome Powell will be hawkish in his tone, which means, we're not pleased with inflation. We have more work to do. We expect, another hike in the future. The way that he speaks about that hike specifically, meaning if he indicates another pause over the next meeting, that could be, a bullish indicator and a sea of hawkishness. But if he's saying that we want to hike, as soon as next month, or soon, he's using language that indicates the near future, that would be quite hawkish for markets. So, and then, the other weird thing is that he could be extremely hawkish on Wednesday and we could dump, or we could have, a very 45-degree sell-off. And then if PCE comes in dropping like a rock again, the market, I feel like, may have no choice but to step in and buy that dip. So that's, that's why I'm thinking it's going to be a really good trading week, because if you trade to the downside on the hawkishness and then you get the upside on PCE, that's the picture perfect week right there. You're hitting both marks. But, of course, we don't know how the cards are going to fall. So I think it'll be a bit confusing. But once we get the indications that we expect, i.e. hike, no hike, inflation, print, beat, or miss, those will be, very easy to trade off of.
All right. CJ, Monte, your thoughts as we go into that Wednesday afternoon after hearing the decision that's made?
Yeah, not only that, I mean, we also have some big earnings coming up between now and then, right? So there's another monkey wrench in the trading week. I think the best opportunities this week, and the places I'll be looking, will be in regional banking sectors, like things like KRE and XLF. I think those could benefit massively from, if we do get that hawkishness from Jerome Powell. And previously, I had been kind of bullish on big tech names leading into earnings. But I think after seeing what Tesla did post earnings, they beat on the top and bottom line and plummeted afterwards. So I think that has a lot of people worried. A lot of people that had previously bought calls in these big tech names might be forced to capitulate because the earnings isn't the catalyst that they hope for. And then that, in conjunction with the Fed, they don't get the price action that they're looking for. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement in big tech, but I think, regional banking plays like XLF and KRE, they look strong today. And I think they could continue to run after the Fed meeting. Tesla experienced that top the other week, and boy, I know there was a lot of liquidations going on there. I know there was a lot of profit taking on that unexpected direction, the chart. Also, to your point with regional banks, completely battered since we went through the quote unquote regional banking crisis in early spring. KRE has always been a favorite of mine. I particularly use KRE when playing all the regional banking. I like the proportion of the basket it carries. And I agree with you. I think it's time for a turnaround in there as they begin to resume positive earnings. So what goes down eventually has to go up at some point. CJ, bullish, bearish, what are we talking here Wednesday afternoon?
Oh man, I don't know. Don't ask me. To Monte's point, I like the risk reward. I haven't really looked at the banking charts like XLF or KRE, but they had the most shorts in terms of hedge funds net shorting various asset classes over the past 4 weeks. So
hedge funds
you always like to pay attention to
dollar and everything connected to it.
Yeah, so I always like to take note of those relationships where you have somewhat of an asymmetry, and you kind of know who could potentially buy your bags if you're right. It's all about sizing risk and reward at the end of the day, right? So in terms of FOMC, sure, maybe we see some volatility, maybe we see 25 bips, maybe we see no bips. I don't really know. I think personally, if we see a sell-off, we're probably going to get, I would see it probably getting bid up in the next couple days, or just kind of grinding higher. But yeah, I don't have a huge strong conviction. I just would rather I like to react to these events much more than trying to anticipate them. I think I'd probably have better luck hitting like a 2-3 leg parlay than playing FOMC. So with that being said, I'll probably just, it's more reactive to price than like trying to prophesize it.
Hey, listen, we all know the Fed was late to the game when it came to rates. That's a given. And they're just back, they're trying to make up for it now. I think we're getting 25 basis points this month. I think we're getting 25 basis points September and holding lockstep for the remainder of the year. I also don't think we're increasing rates in the first quarter of next year. I think that'll drag out into the second quarter. And as we all know, August, they're off playing in, Valley in Wyoming and all that crap. So there won't be anything in August. All right, let's get to a story that the only reason, there's two reasons I actually care about this story. One is the bizarre nature of it. And we're talking about Worldcoin here, which is from Sam Altman. Okay. And I went to the New York Post for the headline on this one. Worldcoin, the bizarre eyeball scanning cryptocurrency token. Guys, not only is this a bizarre sounding crypto when it has to do with your retina, but Worldcoin sounds like one of the biggest scams in history that happened during crypto, and I think that was called OneCoin. There's these world takeover sounding names that somehow I can't get behind. Nick, I'm going to go to you first on this because you actually took a position on its debut, and tell us how you did and why you came with that outlook.
Yeah, so let me, I think I have the position here somewhere just to prove to everybody that I did indeed trade it. Yes, sir. So here is the position. There we go. So I had a very nice short this morning. I had no clue this was even launching today. I woke up to a lot of tweets. I took one look at the chart and saw I think a $25 billion fully diluted valuation. I'm sorry, I can't even get that out of my mouth without laughing. We talked about this a while back, and I think they only have like a couple million signups, and the coin is launching at a $25 billion valuation. So I think the chart looks a lot like SUI. And I don't even know what SUI really stands for, but I know it's like a VCL1. And it pumped a lot on the open and then just has been trickling off ever since. And I took pretty much the same analysis on this one. So I saw that it was starting to sell off. I entered the short. I will admit that this was a more luck than skill, because when you're shorting something that just launched, you're kind of clenching your cheeks and praying that it hits some sort of lower target in mind. So that's kind of what I did here. But I mean, if we just go ahead and look at the WLD chart, where is it here? So I mean, this is what we're looking at here. So, big spike up, some tweezers here. Then we have, our short-term weekly VWAP. It got rejected. And then that's when I started taking shorts, was right after this rejection. So, for now, it's trading outside of the little mini Bollinger Bands. It could definitely spike up to, maybe grab this liquidity up here. It could also try and do this. So if it goes back above the VWAP and then closes back under, that's where I'll look for shorts again. If it breaks below this level right here, 2.134, I may also look for shorts again, but I will say it's going to get a little bit tricky with Bitcoin and ETH trying to suck some money back into the system. But if we just go ahead and look at SUI, which I think is the easiest comparison, this is what I think the future is for Worldcoin. I think it's just we're kind of in this stage right here. And I think it's just going to drop, have volatility, drop, have volatility, drop, have volatility. So anything that is above a $10 billion valuation on launch, I'm probably going to fade in this market. This is not bull season yet. And I think that anybody who owned this prior to it going on the public markets is going to take money off the table right now, and probably go hang out on a yacht and drink pina coladas and laugh at us. So I will be trying to do that myself.
Let's, listen, we got a coin here. It's a little unorthodox in what its goal is. It doesn't have many signups, as a couple million. That's less people than the population of the island I live on. And what are we thinking about success here, or what are we thinking about even adoption here? I'm going to go ahead and speculate that none of us would sign up for this. No. And in the world we live in, what are the expectations that it's going to be a success? CJ, I always love your doomsday attitude, and when it comes to these tinfoil topics. So, lay it on us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go get my eyes scanned in the orb right after I go to the police station to give them my fingerprints.
Don't forget about a blood draw either. You want them to be able to find your DNA.
I think there is actually some interesting technology when you apply like the zero knowledge proofs. You can actually prove that somebody's identity without actually seeing their activity or what they've done on chain. So I think the application, like Vitalik wrote a really nice piece about Worldcoin and referenced this fact. Now the tokenomics, obviously very seemingly predatory, but this technology could be interesting, especially the way they're applying the ZK snarks and those zero knowledge proofs. Those have always been a very revolutionary aspect of crypto, being able to mathematically prove something is verifiable without actually knowing the information about it. So perhaps this is something that really does help and prevents against, deep fakes. But I don't know, maybe it's a project that's a bit too early or a bit too ahead of its time. But aside from the tokenomics, I do try to take an open mind to the actual technology they're trying to create. Because at the end of the day, ChatGPT, while you can criticize it, like it is cool and it is useful in some regards. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm waiting for it to become a little bit more than just a fad toy during holiday season. But I don't want it to go as far as it taking over the world and killing us all in the end either. So it's where that happy medium falls.
My thing is like, what's the reward? Like, okay, I get like a couple bucks in world token. Like clear, I signed up for because I find that easier than TSA pre-check. They've got my eyeballs, they've got all that, but I'm getting a really good service in return. I'm skipping the entire line, and I barely have to show any identification at the airport, which they're going to take all my ID and scan my life with all of their cameras anyway. But it's like, what am I getting by joining your dystopian coin group? I don't fully understand that yet.
Yeah, I think the whole goal of this Worldcoin and CJ mentioned that Vitalik wrote a paper. I put it in the chat, the YouTube chat for you guys if you want to check it out. But he makes some great points about what exactly this token is trying to do, right? And that's trying to prove that someone is undoubtedly a human. And there's basically two ways you can do that. You can do it with biometrics, which is the route they're going down, retina scanning or fingerprint scanning, or what. That's one way to prove that someone's a human. Physical, biometric tooling. Or another way is social graph based. So let's say me, myself, CJ, and Alex have already been verified, but Nick has not yet been verified as a real person. We vouch for him, say we know him as a real person, thus bringing him into the network of known people. Those are basically the two main attempts at proof of personhood that we've seen so far. And much of it has been built on ETH. But for me, like Nick, you said you signed up for TSA pre-check. I'm like even unwilling to do that. Not that I'm going to go out and commit a crime, but I'm just unwilling to willingly give my fingerprints, even if it does mean that I get to cut in line at the airport. Like I'll wait in line. And yes, I know they get my passport and whatnot, but just something about having access to my physical fingerprints or my retina scan or a blood sample or like a DNA sample. Like I would never send anything into 23andMe or use those.
That's another good one. They caught that Idaho murderer because of his I don't even think it was his. I think it was his family's DNA that was in it, and they used the DNA at the crime scene to compare it with the family DNA.
I love how you guys are like, oh yeah, I wouldn't give them anything, and like Apple has all of our facial recognition. And
and that's the thing, right? Is like Apple, but Apple swears that they don't give it to the government.
And none of us.
They didn't even let the terrorist phone get cracked into. I remember the Israelis were making a big stink about that a couple years ago.
They actually,
that's the question, Monte. Is technology becoming too intrusive, right?
Yeah, there really is a question. Like, have we opened Pandora's box? Like, and can we close it? Like you said, we need to find that happy medium where it's like the AI is serving us and we're not serving the AI. But this idea of like proof of personhood and giving up your biometric data, there's no reward big enough for me to do that. But the one thing I will say is that the idea that deep fakes are getting so good that someone could create like a fake surveillance tape of me committing a crime and that could be used as proof against me. That could be the benefit of Worldcoin, right? Is that they have my retinas and like, the deep fake doesn't match perfectly my retina scan. And therefore I'm acquitted of the crime that I'm trying to be framed for.
The guy on camera has 0 Worldcoin, but Monte has 100 Worldcoin, so they know that the broke guy is not Monte.
Could be. And then you're down like the slippery slope that China is going down of like social hierarchies and whatnot. So I hate Worldcoin. I'll say it as a concept, but it does intrigue me because, bots are so prevalent these days and we need a way to identify real people versus fake people because, fake people could be voting in elections. It's happened in the past. Like they've had dead people vote in elections to rig elections. Why not have, fake AI vote that can appear as real people? We're not too far from that point. So we're going to need to be able to identify a real person from a bot. And that's getting harder and harder to do every day.
And while we're on this topic, like we Alex on B3, we've talked a lot about Twitter kind of transitioning into X and being the all-in-one platform. And while that is great, and I don't think any of us, and most of us probably use it the way it's intended, the dystopian thing, and this has already happened, the FBI was contacting credit card companies and manufacturers to see who was purchasing guns and food up to the January 6th situation. So if Twitter got subpoenaed to say, we think Nick committed a crime, we need to understand what he was purchasing between X date and Y date. Twitter doesn't have to, but, and I don't think they probably would jump at it with Elon Musk, but the more companies that you're giving financial and personal information access to could be used against you in a court of law or, and later down the road, God forbid. So it's always something to be conscious of because I agree. I like being able to buy things on Amazon with one click. But the more you do it, the more you intertwine all of these cookies and data and information on the internet for yourself. So it's a catch-22. So moral of the story is don't commit murder and insurrections, but sometimes people are at the wrong place at the wrong time and shit happens. So it's always good to be aware.
All right, guys. Well, that was a lively and spirited conversation with a little darkness to it. I like it. Anyway, guys, this is Monday. It's the beginning of Crazy Week as we are renaming it here. Tell us what your thoughts are. Leave it in the comments. Are you long? Are you short? We'll see. We'll see how J Powell reacts this coming Wednesday. Also, don't forget to tune in every day. There's Money in Motion, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's with CJ and Monte, as well as on Tuesdays and Fridays, Squawk Box, midday, 12:45 with Nick Mancini. And our Trade the Chain members AMA is on Wednesday. And if you are not a member, come and try us out. 14 days free. Love it or leave it. So, guys, we will get with you tomorrow and have a fantastic rest of a trading day. CJ, Monty, Nick, thank you, guys.